welcome back to another episode of the Right on Target podcast. As always, we are your hosts. I'm Justin. I got Michael.
What up?
I got Aubrey.
What's up? What's up?
And we have a special episode for you today. We have a very special guest. He is an author. He is also part of making the JBA League. Brandon Williams.
How y'all doing?
Good, man. It's good to have you. Thank you for coming on the show.
No, my pleasure. Appreciate y'all having me.
Of course, of course. Well, first of all, like I said, you're an author with the JBA League, a league of our own. You can get that on Amazon or the website, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Awesome. And that's BrandonWilliamsAuthor.com, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Of course. Nice little plug there. Michael, you got a chance to read the book, right?
Oh yeah, I got a chance to dive into the book, man. It's really good. It's really good. So I suggest it for anybody who is just into sports in general. You don't have to be into basketball specifically, but it's a really good read.
That warms my heart, man. It always it's good to hear. You know, I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I try to make sure that I tell the story as well as I could. So, anytime I get any kind of feedback on it, it always, kind of validates that, I did a pretty decent job with it. So I appreciate, thank you for supporting, and I appreciate the fact you shared that. It definitely means a lot.
Oh yeah, of course.
Of course. Well, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit about what you've done, of course, with the JBA, and kind of just go into detail a little bit about yourself.
Oh, sure, definitely. So, I'm an educator, and I've been teaching for, about close to 10 years now. I was also a basketball coach for about 10 years. I coached at a high school and middle school level. So, when the whole concept of the JBA started, coming about, and LaVar, he mentioned this about December of 2017. And that was right after, Jello, the whole China situation, when they pulled him out of UCLA and everything. Right. So when he first mentioned it, it was kind of like a perfect marriage for myself, who I just mentioned, educator, basketball coach, have a passion for basketball, period, and just sports. To be able to offer players an alternative route to the NCAA, especially a lot of players who, school's just not their thing. Doesn't mean that they're not capable, but some of them, they aren't. I mean, they know that all they really want to do is just do something extracurricular. So when LaVar was coming up with the concept, I was like, man, it speaks to me. And I was already a big advocate of what he was doing anyway, with the whole Big Baller brand and the whole movement with, Black ownership, empowerment, having your own brand, and just having a shoe and a brand coming into the draft for Lonzo, like that, like I was hooked from that moment. So when the whole JBA came about, I wanted to be a part of it in some kind of way. So, that's just a little bit about my background in terms of, what drew me to LaVar and Big Baller brand and the JBA League. And other parts about myself is, I've been in media for almost 10 years as well. I started my own blog in 2014. That allowed me to, collaborate and partner with an Alabama football publication called Touchdown Alabama. And that publication started off as a print magazine, and they needed assistance and help kind of going from print to the digital phase of things. And that's kind of where I had, some expertise at the time. And they entrusted me to kind of, use my digital expertise and bring a print publication more into the forefront. So we're an all-Black publication and credentialed. So, the publication. So we're at the practices, the games, and went from basically not having any full-time employees to now employing over 5 full-time. And that's something I'm very proud of, to have that type of accomplishment, to see the growth that we've had. So again, all that kind of helped with making me more drawn into what LaVar was doing, because now I've seen what a Black-owned company can do on a small scale, obviously, but seeing him do it on a grandiose, large scale, and then bring it to the masses, like I just want to try to do my best to be a part of it.
Speaking of the Ball family and of your blog that you said you started off with, I saw that you started off as a huge ball fan, just about the whole family, not just LaVar himself, but just the whole family. And you started off kind of creating heading your blog towards that, towards towards the whole Ball family and what they were doing in basketball. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So when I first started in 2014, it was all sports encompassing. Like, I was talking about basketball, baseball, football, college, whatever.
Right.
And then I kind of let that go once I started I started, working with the Alabama football publication and running that as a part owner and COO. But when the whole phase kind of came about, like in 2017, like my whole focus just went towards that. Like I'm on my Facebook just going crazy. Like every time something's going on, like I'm like, why are we not like a part of this? Because y'all probably remember, like it was very polarized. You was either on this side or you was on that side. It wasn't a whole lot of in between. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
So I was way over here. So if you was like with LaVar, I was there, but like 100 yards past you. Like I was like really crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like it sounds funny, but like Mike can probably attest to it depending on how far you are in the book. Like I put like some of the actual messages that I was putting on Facebook, like in my book. Like that's how I was really going ham on like some of my Facebook friends. So long story short, later on that year, towards the end of 2017, like I did another post, something that had happened with the brand or the family in the media. And I put another long post, and my sister was like, Brandon, why don't you just put this on your blog or something like that? Like you keep putting all these long statuses on Facebook. Like, why don't you just So I'm like, okay, you got a point there. Like I could probably just start writing my own content on a site. So I basically just revamped the old site that I had, just restarted everything, and it was just nothing but like Ball family content, but it was more of on a positive spin. So again, most of that press that they were getting was 85-90% negative. You would get a pretty good amount of supporters, but most of the time they were always saying, oh, this is what Lonzo didn't do, or this is what LaVar did, and why did he do it this way? It was always the negative spin to it instead of saying, well, you may not agree with it, but this is why he did it. You know what I'm saying? So I was trying to be that voice.
I was going to ask you. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I was going to be that voice from an online print perspective, because I didn't really do the YouTube. I tried it a little bit, but it wasn't my thing. I'm really good at writing and get my voice out that way. So that was kind of what prompted me to do that.
Okay. I was going to ask you also, do you think you putting that positive spin on your blogs about the Ball family, do you think that kind of changed the direction of where they were going and stuff? Because I know at first when he first popped on the scene, he believed strongly of what he was doing, and that kind of rubbed people the wrong way. And so I kind of figured that you writing that blog maybe kind of put the light on them a different way to show people like, hey, this family is not about that. This family is all about, it's family orientated. He's very business minded, and he's all about basketball.
On a small scale, yeah, I think a little bit. There were a lot of people. I mean, he had tons of supporters. I mean, it was just our voices just weren't heard as much because we didn't have the big platforms. ESPN, Fox, FS1, or whoever. The clicks, and y'all know how this works. Being in media, sometimes, unfortunately, the negative stuff grabs the attention the most, and the positive stuff. I mean, you'll get some clicks or some views, but if I say LaVar just he took his son out of high school, or whatever the headline might be, that's going to grab more attention than saying LaVar supports his son, supports his son. He did whatever. You'll be like, oh, that's cool, but you may go click on something else. So I wanted to not give the clickbait negative headlines and the stories. I wanted to try to say, okay, like one of my first stories on my site was when they went to Lithuania. right at the start of 2018. So I would say, okay, LaVar and family have touched down in Lithuania, whatever the case may be, whatever it was. So I was trying to give more of that type of perspective and updates, more so than, or why did he have to take his kids from Chino Hills and fly them all across the world? You know what I'm saying? So I didn't want to be that particular voice. I wanted to kind of just give a different. So to answer your question or expound a little bit more on that, there was a lot of people that felt the same way I did. They just didn't maybe have the wherewithal or the voice to start a website and start typing about it, and grab and maybe get people's attention that way. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it made them move any differently, but I think, and I know that they appreciated having someone kind of speak and advocate for them that had even a small voice like mine.
Right.
Yeah. My bad.
And speaking of that, I was listening to, you were on a podcast, another podcast, and I was listening to what grabbed their attention to you with that tweet about the Big Baller brand water. I thought that was a really interesting. So that's kind of like what opened the door for you, is kind of in a way, along with your blog, and them reading all your tweets and all of that. Would you say that's pretty much how it got your journey started with the Ball family?
Absolutely, because at that point, I don't even know if my objective was to even be noticed. I mean, it would have been cool if they would have, if I would have, after writing all those articles, because at that point, that was in February. I started really in early January, probably like January 3rd or something like that. So, whether it was once a day or twice a day, I probably wrote at least 20 to 30 articles to that point, if not a little bit more, but a lot of tweets in addition to that. So I might, tag Big Baller Brand or tag LaVar on Twitter. Plus I'm putting a story out. Like, man, do they know about it? Do they see it? Do they care? Well, then all of a sudden you randomly post something about, and I think the title was LaVar Ball could potentially be a billionaire with Big Baller Brand water. And you write that, you press publish, and then you go about your business like nothing else. And then literally, I'll never forget it. And I kind of detail it in the book. I'm just sitting at home and I just go check my analytics. Y'all probably check your analytics on whatever, social, whatever. And I check it and I'm like, hold up. Like, something happened? Like, I mean, it's a good hold up. Like, I'm like, whoa. Because normally my numbers were just like, just okay. Like, really nothing major at all.
Yeah.
But it like was like this, like straight up. So I go to Twitter and I noticed on like my first notification, it was like Big Baller Brand had retweeted that article. So I'm like, oh snap. And I didn't even realize until the next day that LaVar actually retweeted it first, and then they retweeted after he retweeted it. So I was tripping
right away.
Probably, let's see. I wish I knew exactly. I probably wrote it that afternoon, and then I noticed it around 5 or 6. So I had to go back and find the exact timestamp, but I mean, it happened the same day that I wrote it, that I published it. I do know that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was crazy. So what it did for me though was it kind of validated that, like, okay, whether or not they were reading it or not, like it's somebody took note to it. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was LaVar's camp or just people who were supporting of the Big Baller Brand movement, like it was just even more validation that, okay, Brandon, you may not ever meet these guys, they may not ever want to do anything with you, but they appreciate the fact that you're at least trying to not be one of the naysayers or the negative people.
Yeah.
You know, they needed some positivity. You know, they were getting like just slammed by everybody. So I think they just probably needed some voice, like even if it was small, they needed something, and I think that's just kind of what got their attention.
Yeah, and just speaking from experience, I'm like the Ball fan of the group.
Oh,
So I actually remember coming across your article. I didn't know it was you at the time, but I remember seeing the headline about the Big Baller Brand water maybe becoming a billionaire from it. And it was just nice to see a positive, like, positive news about the Ball family because it was few and far between. I'm sure you know that. so it was very nice to see, positive spin on stuff.
No, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, for sure. So, Brandon, tell us exactly what your role became as you got started into the JBA. I know you wore a lot of hats, but what exactly was the first job that you started off with?
How did the JBA even come about?
Oh, yeah. That too.
With me, how did it come about with me? Was that the question?
Well, I guess let's say, yeah, when you got involved with the JBA, where were they at that point?
All right, good question. So they were just starting like tryouts. All right. So at that point, I had gotten linked up. I'm not sure if y'all know who AB the hero is. He's a YouTuber. So he was basically doing what I was doing on the video side, on the YouTube side. Just putting out a lot of positive content on the Ball family, but on a video form. I was kind of the written form. He was the video form. And they actually got wind of him first. And they sent him like some merch and all that. And he did like, a video on that. And then they invited him to one of the tryouts. So how it all happened was he mentioned my name to them, like, hey, this is another guy that's kind of helping giving good content. They're like, oh yeah, we know who that is. And he's like, is it cool if I shoot him your contact information? That's where Alan Foster came in. So he hit me up and like, hey man, here's Alan's number. He's expecting your call or whatever. So I called Alan like randomly. I was like, hey, what's up? This is Brandon Williams, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh yeah, hey, I'm in a meeting right now. Like, I'll hit you back. So I'm like, oh, dope, cool, all right. I never heard back from him. So so I'm like, okay, I need to be proactive. Tryouts are going on. They've been in Seattle, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Houston. They about to stop in Atlanta. I need to be there. And I told my wife, I said, look, because I'm in North Carolina, so I'm like 6 hours away. I'm like, I just need to go. Like they know who I am, but if I'm gonna have an opportunity to work with them, I gotta be proactive. I gotta at least just be there and just see what happens. So I make a drive on a Friday evening because the trials were on Saturday morning. I stay at my sister's house. I pull up to the high school, and that morning they walk in. It was Lonzo, Alan, Demo, LaVar's brother, Lorenzo. And then long story short, we just kind of, chopped it up. I, told them this is me in the flesh. And I was just kind of working the event. Like, I'm like kind of showing what I can do. And then, at the end, he was like, hey, would you like to come out to lunch with us? So that's how that initially came about. But in terms of my role, that's where it kind of got kind of weird because I really didn't even know how I was going to even work with them because all I knew that what my skill set was writing. I could write positive stuff, but they were like, you could do PR for us. And I'm like, man, I don't know nothing about PR. Not how PR is supposed to be done. Not how PR is supposed to be. And I don't know if y'all know anybody that's done PR or anything like that, but there are certain levels and nuances to PR. And if you're not doing it the right way, then you were like way behind the 8 ball. And that's how I was. So y'all may want to get into that later, but that was what my first major role was to be the JBA's director of media, PR, whatever you want to call it. And then that turned into social media, making sure I got the player bios out. And then shout out to AB. He suggested that because at first he was going to be like a one-man commentator. And he was like, I think it would work best if, I had a duo. And they was like, well, who you think would be good? He was like, well, Brandon would probably be a good fit. And like that like got me super duper excited because I'm like, I've coached, but I've never done like live commentary. I've seen Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy and whoever else, but I'm like, I've never been the one that's doing it. I'm like, that could probably be pretty cool. So he's the one that first got me linked up pretty much. And then he threw me another bone by letting me be a voice. So if you ever go back and watch any highlights or just old games, like, you're going to hear me and him as basically the voices of, kind of how this whole thing is going, like kind of telling the story of like what's going on with the JBA as the games are going on. And that really is special to me because it's like I'm forever entrenched because there's so many people that y'all will never hear about that really made this whole league be what it is. But you're always going to know who I am. You're going to know who he is. Um, you know, because of I'm out visibly, like you can see me as a part of it, and you can hear my voice. So that's kind of the evolution of where the genesis of it, and then kind of what it eventually turned into.
Okay, yeah. So another question: with all of that responsibility with the JBA, and you were working a full time job, correct? Or when did you separate yourself from an actual, not an, I don't want to say an actual, but like your full time job and the JBA? Did you continue to work both? How did that happen?
I know that was exhausting. It had to be.
Had to be.
Man, that was crazy, man. And thank God that I was out. I was teaching because if I wasn't, if I had like just somebody else's job, like working at whatever,
Yeah.
I would have had to take like a sabbatical or whatever. But I'm off during the summer,
Oh,
so it really
okay.
worked. It lined up almost perfectly. But before that, yes, I was still working because we flew out to LA the 1st of May, and I don't know if y'all watch Ball in the Family, but there's an episode where they talk where I'm on there and all those other guys that were initially a part of the JBA staff, where they kind of had us meeting about what our roles are going to be and how we're going to formulate the league and everything. So that was the beginning of May. Excuse me. And Jello and Mello, they had just got back from Lithuania, so it was like a coming home party for them or whatever. So we basically had like 6 weeks to get everything from the start to just getting to the first game.
Oh man.
So imagine working, my school started at 8:15, so I got to be there 7:45, ends at 3:30. So I'm doing work while I'm supposed to be teaching, you know what I'm saying? Then when I get home, I got to be, husband, father. But then I in the mix of all of that, I got a whole bunch of duties I got to do to try to get this league going. So it'll be 11, 12, 1 o'clock sometimes. Then I got to get right back and do the same thing. So it was extremely exhausting, as you can imagine. Just basically working, feel like you're working all these jobs.
Yeah.
But then you gotta, I gotta jump on a Zoom call. I gotta be a part of all these text and email threads, and I gotta have another call with Alan or somebody like that. And it was just so much day after day after day. And then you get even closer when all the teams are finally picked and everybody knows where they're going. I gotta start contacting the players to get their bios and get information and all that type of stuff. And so June 10th is the question or the answer to that question when I was actually able to fully dedicate, because that was my last day of teaching. And then I flew out, June 9th, something like that. And then I flew out on June 10th to go to LA. So it's basically I left that last day and then jumped straight into like really, really full time where I can focus nothing. I can focus on strictly JBA related stuff. And then that's when it really got super real once I finally got out into the LA area. And that's when it was really crazy because it was like nonstop.
I was gonna ask you also, with you balancing all these many hats you got to wear with starting up the JBA League and only having a limited amount of time. Was there ever a time you didn't think this was gonna work out for you, or you just thought like, man, I don't know how far we're gonna be able to take this or anything like that?
Yeah, and I kind of I touched on that in the book a little bit. Right before I was leaving, I wouldn't say I was having doubts. It was just I had a lot of questions that just weren't answered. Like, like I'm like, okay, I know I'm getting paid, but like, how's it going to be paid? When's it going to be paid? Like just typical questions you would have from any employer, because I hadn't signed anything, I hadn't filled out any forms or nothing like that.
Right.
We didn't do any of that until I actually got to LA. But I'm like, okay, I'm about to get on a plane. I'm about to leave my family. Like, I need to have something concrete. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And I hadn't had none of that. So like I'm on the phone with Alan like literally the day before. I'm like, hey man, like no, I'm texting him, and he just called me like kind of like frustrated. And I put this in the book. I'm like, I'm just asking you questions that anybody else would have. Like, I don't know why you coming at me like this, um, but yeah, so that was kind of concerning because my kids were really young at the time. Like I had my youngest hadn't even turned 1 yet.
Oh
I
wow.
have so I got a little baby, 4-year-old, three, whatever, I can't remember, a three, a five, a 5'3", and a barely 1-year-old at the time. And I'm about to leave my wife basically for 2 months by herself. So that's a lot to
That's a lot on
hold
your
in.
plate.
Like you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
so I wanted to make sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed before I just left my family.
Right.
So that was probably the toughest part because I'd never done nothing like that before. I mean, I've gone on work trips and stuff before, but that's when they're coming back, and it's never going to be no longer than a weekend or maybe even a week at the most.
Yeah.
I've never like there's an expectation I'm gonna be going for a month to 2 months. So that was the toughest part. But in terms of whether I felt like the we would never either make it or the league would never get to the first game or whatever, I don't think I even had that thought, man. Like, I mean, I felt like we had a really good, especially with knowing that Melo was going to be playing.
Yeah.
Like if Melo wasn't going to be playing, I'd be like, okay, like, are these guys going to flame out? Everybody wanted to try to get a piece of him or at least
Yeah.
be close to him because they
Exactly.
knew that number one, right? They knew that Big Baller Brand was legit at the time, and Melo was this is going to be his first game back on U.S. soil. So everybody wanted to kind of latch on to that. So
Yeah, that's a
um,
big deal.
I didn't, yeah, I didn't think that it would not happen. You know what I mean?
Right. Uh sorry about that. So with that, do you feel like maybe that first season was rushed? Y'all like it kind of got rushed into things, so that everybody was kind of running around trying to get it all figured out to meet that deadline.
1,000%, man. Like I say this all the time, man. Like this was a legit professional league, regardless of what folks think about like LaVar and everything. Like we still had a season. We had real players. They was getting paid. We was flying all over the country, and to do all this with basically 6 weeks, like we needed minimum 6 months. Like
Yeah.
three months would have been like it probably would have been to have a month and a half extra. It would have felt a little bit better. But if we wanted to do it like really, really right to where we can actually do promotion in all these 8 cities, because we didn't do no type of promotion. Like I don't know if y'all follow like the XFL or the USFL USFL or whatever.
Mm.
But before they launched again, they went and they hit all those cities really hard. So like they got social media pages. Like some of them fans, like they got all the swag and everything, all the
Yeah.
shirts and all that type of stuff. Like they really feel like they part of the Tampa Bay Vipers or whatever it's called.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like imagine if we would have went to Atlanta and just had 6 months to promote. Okay, this is the new team in your area. Support. Here's a kickoff event that we're going to do. We're going to have another kickoff event to kind of get you excited. And then now we got people excited to come to that arena. I forget. I think it's Infinite down there. I get confused with some of them. But imagine we go there and then we go to Citizens Business Bank in Ontario, California. Y'all in LA?
We're
No,
in
in
Dallas.
Dallas, yeah.
Oh, y'all in Dallas. Oh, so
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was Curtis Caldwell Center. Is that
Yeah, I
in
think that's where y'all are.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Garland? Yeah. So
Yeah,
imagine
Garland.
yeah. So we go to the Dallas and we're there for 3 to 4 months just doing straight promo. We might have a Dallas Ballers really big contingent of fans that are just excited about something new and fresh in their area. And I think that was kind of some missteps that we had, where we didn't get an opportunity to promote the lead like we really could have, because there would have been some people that would have came on the strength of LaVar, the big baller brand, and LaMelo. Like they would have come. So trying to do it in 6 weeks, we did it, thank God, but it made it way more difficult than what it needed to be done.
So Brandon, when you first met the Ball family and actually meeting LaVar, how was it for the first time meeting? Was it everything that you expected, or was it a little different, or how was it?
Yeah. So that was back in May of 2018. So when, like I mentioned, we all kind of flew out there and met up, and I think we first went to the warehouse, and then we went to his house after that, because that's where all the meeting and then the big party or whatever was supposed to be taking place was at his place. So so I come in, and I think I go into like the kitchen area or whatever, and he comes up, and then just as loud and wild and crazy as he comes off on TV. That's
Wow.
basically how he greets me, and I kind of put that in the book, and kind of like the words that he used basically. But it was yeah, I mean, it was kind of what I expected, and I kind of appreciated it too, because you never want it to feel like somebody wasn't being authentic,
Yeah.
So if you're gonna be loud and boisterous and crazy, to the people that are interviewing you, I kind of expect the same in person, and that's exactly how he was. And every time I talked to him, it was always the same. He's got a real silly side about him, but he has his persona is really large. Like it makes him seem bigger than what he even is, and he's a big guy. I don't know if y'all seen him in person, but he's a large person. Like he played professional football, and just standing next to anybody who's played football, like professional football, that's different than somebody that just says, "Oh, I played football in high school," or
Yeah.
whatever. They look like a athlete and football player, so he has a big stature to him. So, it was a cool experience just to meet him, and just kind of see how he is in his element,
Yeah.
because he was at home. So I kind of just, even while the cameras weren't necessarily focused on him, I just kind of was able to see, was he the same way? Because, he knows how to put on in front of the camera. Like he knows when he knows when the lights are on. But he was even the same way, even if they were off focusing on somebody else while the reality show was going. So it was cool. We shot pool at one point. They didn't put that in on the show, but we shot pool. And then we had a little meeting, and then they had a little pool party, whatever, and all that type of stuff out there. So it was just cool just to kind of just see how he interacts and see it like right there in front of my face. So that was a pretty cool experience.
I was gonna say with that. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just saying, man, that's pretty cool to know he keeps that family energy. Do you think that family energy kind of translated over to how he treated the players in the JBA?
I think so. I mean, he's used to training, kids and coaching as well. So he had been doing that ever since the boys have been little. So I think it was more so of an easy transition, because one of the things that I noticed and that I really appreciated was that he was at every game. Um, like I'll be honest, I'm not even sure what I expected. But I kind of expected him to be definitely at all the LA games because the son played there.
Right.
But the fact that if we were in Chicago or New Jersey and LA wasn't even on the schedule, like LaVar was there.
Oh, he's actually
Um,
meeting y'all at the okay.
yeah, so
Oh,
every single game that we had, LaVar was at that game, regardless of whether Melo played or not. Like he was there, front row, just supporting his league. So you know, he was able to be able to see each player play and have conversations and give advice if that's what he chose to do. So I mean, yeah, he interacted with them like I'm sure he would interact with with uh with any team that he's a part of or league or whatever it might be.
right.
So yeah, I mean, I was able to kind of just see how he just would be around a regular AAU team that he may have had in the past.
Okay. So kind of him being that hands-on person, do you think that kind of rubbed off you and being hands-on with the JBA League within yourself, or that kind of just came with the role that you had to play in the league?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was used to, working with kids anyway,
Right, with teaching, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Teaching at the high school level, coaching at the high school level, middle school level, like all that was natural to me, and it was comfortable as well. So I felt like I formed a bond with a lot of players even before the season started because I had to reach out to a lot of them, and some of them they were so young. We had a few of them that were 17. A lot of them were kind of more so in the 18 to 20 year range. But even then, that's still like childlike in a lot of ways. They're not really grown,
Yeah.
regardless of what their age is or whatnot. So, they were still very impressionable, very excited, but also very like, immature in a lot of ways. For like, I would ask some basic questions, some of them, and I'd have to like walk them through like exactly what I'm asking. And some of it I'm sure was just nerves. They just wanted to make sure they were doing it right. It's just a reminder that when we were that age, like we still needed guidance all the time. Like
You're right.
they literally signing themselves to play professional basketball, but still they still needed someone to help them. And so it was cool for me to be able to be somewhat of a liaison in some ways to kind of help them kind of get their footing in the very beginning. So I mean I relish that role, man. Like so even to this day, like I'm still in contact with a lot of the players. You know what I'm saying? Because I just care about them so much. So
Yeah.
to answer that question, that didn't really affect me in any way, because it was something that I was already excited to do anyway. Like I looked forward to that part. Like that was one of the parts. Like while I was telling y'all, while I was still teaching and trying to work and everything, like that helped balance and keep me sane because I'm like, okay, it might be tiresome, but I'm getting an opportunity to learn who these young men are, and kind of playing a little bit of a mentor role in some, even if it's not a large role, but somewhat early on as the season's starting to unfold.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one thing about you, like as I was listening to this podcast and just reading up on the way how you were in the JBA, I think, and with what you just told us about your connection with the players, I think that's one thing that's awesome is that for you, it was about all of the players as a whole, not just about LaMelo and LiAngelo. It was everybody.
Right.
And I'm sure the national coverage at the time or whoever, there's more focus on just the Ball family and even maybe, LaVar, because those are his kids, was a little bit more focused, but I like that you looked out for everybody as a whole.
Definitely. And to kind of piggyback on that, like I wasn't even sure how much involvement I was even going to have with LaMelo, to be honest with you. Like I had some trepidation at first because, all of us were for training camp. We were supposed to be in a hotel, like we were stationed in a hotel. So I'm like, well, shoot, he lives in Chino Hills. Like, why would he go from living in this big mansion to like being in a hotel with us? Like I didn't know. Like I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if he stayed there and then just drove to practice and then went back home. But like he was there with us, So if we were in a hotel for 2 weeks plus or whatever it was for training camp, that's exactly where he was. So, I was just excited to know that he was going to be right there in the trenches with us as we were getting everything going. And I appreciated, LaVar and them for ensuring that happened, just so he got the full experience, with everybody, with his teammates, being able to learn and meet other players in the league, and him not being kind of put on this pedestal as some form of an elite figure.
Yeah.
That everybody's like, okay, he's not even really a part of. I mean, he's in the league, but he's not really doing everything we doing. Like he literally did everything that all the other players were doing. Eating the hotel meals and having having to have somebody get him, fast food late at night if that's what
Yeah.
he wanted. There was no like special treatment. He didn't have no penthouse suite in the hotel. He had a regular room with a roommate like everybody else.
Humble.
So yeah, so that was cool. And I pop in his room like I pop in anybody else's room, just to say what's up or whatever, just like he was just a regular kid. So that was cool to kind of to see that he got the same experience as everybody.
Right. I think that's also important, just like that he was there with his teammates, and that way it doesn't look like it's just all about him. He was actually with, grinding out with the team in the hotel
Right.
with them, had a roommate as well. So I think that's huge in that aspect as well, and kind of shows growth. And it's not just, because he easily could have been just hanging out at home and showing up just for practice, but he was actually there in the
Right.
trenches with his team.
Sounded fully dedicated as well too.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool because he was already labeled as like the marquee player for the JBA before the league even started. So, and for him
Right.
to actually buy in and take it as seriously as all the other kids, that's big.
Correct. Well, also not only that, you got to understand, like, he had just spent like 3 or 4 months in Lithuania, so you going from palm trees and 70-degree weather or whatever to like 20-degree weather
Freezing.
and freezing, nothing that is even of normal to you. Like you're like, okay, I just walked outside my nice house with perfect weather, and then I'm coming over here. I can't speak the language. I don't understand the culture. I'm 16 years old. Like I just want to be around my friends. I want to be around something that's what I'm used to. So I think he was just happy just to be back on American soil, back, amongst, his peers that he kind of knows, people that look like him, people that talk like him, that he can understand. So I saw a lot of smiling faces in the beginning, and I thought that was pretty cool. Just see him just act like a normal kid,
Yeah.
normal 16-year-old kid. So he had his goofy ways and silly ways about him, like you expect anybody that's 16 years old to act.
16.
You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a really important thing to kind of to witness, because he made it known very publicly that Europe and Lithuania, he wasn't really feeling it, So just to be able to represent his parents' league, his brand's league, and be the face of it, I think that even for someone that's 16, he took it to heart.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
I also had a question about the recruiting. How was that actually recruiting the actual players to play for these different teams and to actually, kind of show them like, hey, this is where you need to be and we want you here. And also, I know it was kind of hard I know everybody can't make the teams or whatnot, and I know it's also hard to cut certain players too as well. How was that process?
I can't speak too much to the recruiting part of it because I wasn't a part of that. But they had tryouts in all those cities.
Okay.
So a lot of them, which was really interesting, like some of those players, they weren't even from the cities that they tried out. Like I knew, like Jarrell Springer, for example, he played for the Seattle team. He's from Las Vegas. I'm pretty sure he went to the Houston or the Dallas tryout. So I think he either drove or flew to Houston or Dallas, and he was picked, as okay, we want you a part of the league, but they would just put him on the Seattle team. So there was coming from all over, man. I was at the Atlanta trial, and Ison Butler, he's from LA. Jordan Ray was from Detroit. Corey Boyd from St. Louis. So a lot of those players, Nigel Chain was from South Carolina. A lot of them players weren't even from Atlanta that even made the team. You know what I mean? So it just kind of showed you that and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, if we just had even more time to promote just the tryouts.
Yeah.
Some of the trials, the first trial, in Seattle, it didn't have hardly anybody there. But for like Atlanta, for example, it may have been 80 to 100 kids there. It probably would have been 300, 400, 500 if you say, hey, it's January 1st. In April, we're going to have a tryout. Here's how you sign up. I think they put the trial link like a few weeks or so before it actually happened. So you still got a pretty decent amount, but you probably could have gotten even more. So to go back to your second part, what ends up happening is you get the first round of players who they're good, but then there's some of them that's just like, okay, they not good for this level of competition. So that was kind of when, and I talked about this in the book, where it was like a reality check for me, because like I'm getting used to these guys. Like we're a week or so in the training camp. We're like about a week and a half away from the first game. I done talked to these players, for the past 2 weeks before we even get to LA. And then I'm seeing them every day in the hotel, at the practice facility, eating breakfast, eating lunch with these guys, and dinner or whatever. And then all of a sudden, it's like you see them with their bags in the lobby talking about them about to go home. And you're like, well, hold up. What's going on? Like, oh, snap. Like, we cutting players. Like, oh, this real. Like, this a real league. Like, we waving players, adding new ones. So you see one set of group of kids getting shipped out, and then you start bringing in players like Dion Lau, who was the sixth man of the year in the Conference USA. You bringing in, highly rated JUCO players like Khalil Walker and Carlin McSpadden and stuff and players like that, a little bit higher caliber of player. And then you start, as the season starts to go on, you say, okay, now we're getting some high level D2, mid major, or even some high major players that are starting to kind of trickle in midway through the season. As some are still kind of going home. So this kind of happened all throughout the season. So that was where some of the toughest parts for me was, you're getting real relationships and you get really fond of some of these guys, and then you don't see them the next day, and that's kind of how these guys that whether it's NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever the sport, these guys in front offices, like, they see it all the time, and they probably
Used to it.
get a little numb to it, right? But it still doesn't take away that it might still, you really like a person as a person, you just like them, and then it's like, man, they didn't gonna cut it out. They're not gonna cut. It's not gonna cut it here, but I got to ship them out, and that still sucks. But that's kind of what I experienced, unfortunately, quite a few times that summer.
Right. And I think that's one thing too, especially in like these other leagues as well, is, and for players, it's hard for it to not feel personal, because you've been playing for this team for however so long, you've been giving your all, but yet you either get cut, traded, or whatever, and then you're, even guys who have been on a team for however long, uh, they get pushed off, or man, it's hard not to feel personal, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, it is business.
Part of the business.
So that's why, like, executives and stuff get numb to it. But guys like us, and especially like you, who aren't used to that sort of thing, it's harder to deal with, especially once you get close with somebody. Because I know I'd be the same way. I'd be bummed out if some guys that I got it close with had to go.
Their relationship.
Yeah,
Mm,
for sure.
absolutely. And not only that, and not to cut you off, like, my understanding was that this was going to be more of like a developmental, because they sound like 2-year contracts. I'm thinking, okay,
Oh,
17, 18-year-old kids or whatever, like, we're going to let them go through this first year and then bring them in the next year or whatever, and then they would just kind of grow up with us. And then if they go to NBA or G League or overseas, whatever the path might end up being, like, I think that's kind of where I thought. So it was more of, like I said, a reality check, because it's like, well, we'll bring you in at 17, 18 or whatever, but if you're not good enough, then, we're just not going to waste your time or our time. And I think even some of the players may have had that expectation as well, because I don't think any of us, especially like some of us as just regular staff, we didn't necessarily get that memo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just kind of hit us right in the face. And eventually, unfortunately, it kind of became, where, it still hurt, but you're like, oh, so-and-so is not here no more, man. But it was just kind of part of it.
Yeah. And it's also important to note that at that time you're giving up your college eligibility, like because NIL and everything, that wasn't a thing back then. So
Yeah.
that's really rough.
Exactly. So just imagine that. Imagine like, man, like I was only here for 2-3 weeks, and I may have gotten a few hundred or whatever at that point. I can't play college no more. Like that's basically what you're saying. Like man, I wish I would have known this, man. Maybe I would have made this decision. So, there's still some guys who still feel a certain type of way about it. And and it still kind of hurts me to this day that they still feel like that. But yeah, you're right. That's a very valid point, man.
Yeah.
See, I had to skip that developmental stage and get straight to it, huh? Because everything was happening so quick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to that planning process. If you have a few extra weeks or months to plan, maybe
Plan
you
it
say,
out.
okay, well, exactly. You don't maybe run into that.
Right. So let me ask you this. Since the JBA only did last one season, which it still is a pretty good feat that y'all went the entire season, because some of those, smaller leagues, for lack of better words, they don't last. They don't make it through the whole season just due to funding or whatever it may be. So that's impressive that it lasts the whole season. My question to you is what differences in the JBA, what could have helped keep it going, do you think? What would you have changed if you could have, to make it last longer?
I mean, to be honest, the only thing that changed was just them wanting to do it or not. And if at some point, and I'm glad you asked me that question. I mean, we're seeing the JBA's mission unfold right before our eyes.
Right.
The G League Ignite, they came like right after our season. They announced that they were going to start that program with paying elite high school prospects or whatever the opportunity to play in their league and get developed to go into the NBA. And then the overtime elite essentially took darn near verbatim the JBA's concept and made it theirs, which I'm not mad at all. But if you want to know exactly what the JBA could have been, just watch what the overtime elite is doing, because that's really what they tried to do even before my involvement, reaching out to the top 100 players, letting them know, hey, we'll pay you a certain amount. Now they've made it a little bit different because the overtime elite is basically like just one elite team essentially, and then they go and play top high school or prep for whatever it is across the country. But the concept in and of itself, we're going to take top high school players or whatever, and this is your alternative route to the NCAA, and we're going to pay you pretty good salary to do so, develop you, whatever the case may be. But that's what it is. It's right there, like right in front of your face is what the JBA's concept was, or what it could have been, or what it was going to be. But I think once they accomplished whatever they felt they did, LaVar, that is, in the Big Baller Brand Brass. I think that, and not only that, I'll be honest, when the whole situation with Allen kind of unfolded, I think that really changed up everything with all the stuff that they were trying to do, because at that time they were gearing up for that All-American game that they had in 2019. And I ended up flying out there for that. But there was some stuff that they had reached out to me that they were going to try to do that never ended up happening because of that whole situation. That they were going to try to expound on, like doing stuff with grassroots and high school stuff, and eventually getting back to the JBA as well. And then even after Allen's involvement, we had some internal discussions with myself and some other people within the Big Baller Brand brass, so to speak, about doing another season, but then it just never came to fruition. So
yeah,
it was. But yeah, it wasn't for a lack of desire, at least on my end. I've been trying to get something going for years, and that's the reason why the book came out. But yeah, I mean, man, like just asking the question, like you see what has become with the G League Ignite and with Overtime Elite. That's exactly what the JBA was supposed to be doing. So
Right.
but we did it first. So
Oh yeah, of course, of course. So even though that it's not the JBA, do you still feel proud that you can you can say that you were a part of something that uh went on through another organization, but is doing your vision, that it's getting these players, these high profile players, a chance to make money, develop themselves to get them ready for the higher level, which is essentially, like you said, what the JBA was about. Do you still feel like some sort of pride there?
oh, absolutely. I mean, history got to start somewhere. And, I would have loved to have seen the JBA be, everything that LaVar, envisioned it for it to be for however many years. But, there's a lot of players who they don't want to have to go through a grind of sitting in the classroom. That's what LaVar used to always say, why do I got to sit in a chemistry class if all I want to do is play football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And but you telling me I can't play if I can't pass this particular class. This ain't my future. I don't want to do that. I want to play this sport. You know what I'm saying? So why can't I put all my resources in that? I just want to play basketball, football, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So if you're able to go to the G League Ignite, overtime elite, and you can get paid, start signing deals. I mean, you're doing better than 90% of the working population who has gone 4 or 5 years through school, if you're able to parlay that into an actual high paying profession. So I definitely take a lot of pride in helping the G League and overtime elite see that this is something that can happen if you do it the right way, if you take the right amount of time to develop it. You can get, because they've been asking and wanting this for years. It just took a man with a vision,
Yeah.
who was very outspoken and crazy, and decided to make it happen and use his own money to finance it, and you just so happen to have a superstar son to kind of draw attention to it. So you know I think at some point, our story won't be in vain, and I think that there's players, especially, some coaches and some of the staff who might still feel like, our work was in vain. But, everything comes back full circle. And that was kind of some of the reasons why I wanted to write the book, so that people can remember that, yes, we did exist. Yes, we did do this. We did go through a full season. We did accomplish something. And that the story will have to be told someday. And hopefully, somebody will outside of us will give us the recognition and acknowledgement that we deserve. But time will only tell if that happens or not.
It'll come in due time for sure. It takes a while for for people to recognize stuff like that. But y'all are definitely gonna go down in history as far as like just creating y'all's own lane in in basketball, man, and just starting off as an idea and just putting it into fruition and actually just making it happen. You're definitely going to be talked about, like I said, not right now, but I know later on the line, people will catch on and then they'll see what y'all have done.
Absolutely. Oh, most definitely. I'm definitely not concerned about that. Yeah, we'll get our due when it's the right time. And not only that, like, I wanted to make sure that the people that you may not have heard of get their recognition. Well, the Wayne Marinos of the world, Brianna Sims, Rondre King, B. Jones, AB the Hero, Manny Alvarez, Kurt Robinson, like Cooper Neal, like all these people that believed in LaVar's vision and took it to heart and like made it happen. It was really a handful of people. Like we did not have no 30-person or even, we really needed like 50 people. We didn't have that big of a team. We had a handful of people and some interns, and we were able to kind of get this whole thing going.
Right.
In terms of a staff, not like players and coaches and stuff, but like just a staff level of people like on the ground, like with boots on the ground, like really working at it. Like it was just a handful of people, man. But we worked around the clock, man. When I say we was up 3-4 o'clock in the morning, like on a consistent basis, for the most part, for the very beginning of the league, man, like that's how it was, man. But we had to do what we had to do, and we all saw the bigger vision, and we were able to kind of to go get from the starting point and we're able to make it to the finish line.
Like that.
Yeah, y'all made it to the finish line. That's something a lot of leagues can't say they did, honestly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll go ahead and wrap up. But the last question we have for you is what's next for you? What's next for Brandon Williams? What's your next
question.
move?
Great question. Well, first thing is, definitely, this book is noticed by as many people that have a love and passion for basketball and just want to hear a good story of how, a collective group of individuals took, one man's vision and turned it into reality. But also, having the opportunity to work with, others who are, visionaries. So I'm definitely, seeking out and having conversations behind the scenes with, some pretty high profile people to see if I can help tell some of their stories. Work with others who are, in the sports realm, to just continue to expand. And so there might be, one or two extra stories that might be coming in here in the near future. So, just we'll see how that kind of works out, but that's kind of what I got in the works. And also, a little bit of a little nugget. There might be a story that will be told about the JBA in the future to a screen near you. You just never know.
Oh,
All right.
I'll just leave that up to the imagination, but just know that it's something might be in the works. I'll just leave it at that.
Looking forward to that.
Definitely looking forward to that.
Well, hey, man, we appreciate you jumping on. We've enjoyed this conversation with you. We love what you did with the JBA. Just hearing you talk about it, you can definitely hear the passion, and that's always awesome to hear for sure.
Definitely. Now I appreciate y'all having me on. And again, for those who haven't had a chance to get the book, I'm not sure if Mike, if you finished it yet, but
Oh yeah, I finished it. It's a really
great.
good read. Yeah.
I'm definitely getting it now.
Yeah.
I'm for sure.
The JBA League, a league of our own. You can get it on Amazon. If you want the signed copy, you can go to my website, brandonwilliamsauthor.com, and you'll see where you can get the book, and that way it comes directly to me, and I can actually sign it for you and ship it out. But if you want it like right now, you got a ebook version, or you can get the paperback version on Amazon. And then they'll, send it to you prime if you want it the next day or something like that.
Oh yeah, and we'll have the links to that in the episode notes. We'll probably put it on our Instagram too.
Sure.
Make sure y'all get the book. It's definitely a very good read. Like I said, even if you're not a basketball fan, man, just go ahead and check it out. It's very interesting.
I'm sold.
Give the people your socials too before we get out of here.
Okay, yeah, I'm not as active as I used to be. I used to be really active on Twitter and never really been as big on Instagram as I should be, but all my socials are pretty much the same. So it's Talking with Fresh, so it's no G in that. So TALKIN with Fresh. So that's my IG, my Twitter, and I have a TikTok, but it ain't. You might not even know.
Listen, man, we hear you on that.
Yeah, definitely hear you on that.
Absolutely. Well,
but yeah, you can check me out on both of those.
Awesome. We will definitely plug that in as well. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been great having you.
Sure. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all for having me. It's been awesome. Great conversation.
Good.
All right. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to this special episode. Shout out to Brandon Williams for sure. Make sure to get his book, like he said, the JBA League, a league of our own. Michael suggested, great read. Me and Aubrey definitely gonna have to check it out.
I'm sold.
Yeah, for sure. After hearing him talk about it, man, like I said at the end, with the passion that he has still to this day. I mean, that was in 2018. So
yeah. We Did It First is definitely a perfect tagline for that book, because
which
they definitely laid the groundwork for what we seeing now. So.
I mean, with the the G League Ignite and Overtime Elite. I mean, considering that literally in this past draft they had the Thompson brothers and they had Scoot Henderson from the
G League,
the G League,
even Jalen, from the the Rockets.
Oh yeah.
Jalen Green.
Jalen Green.
Jalen Green, yeah. So
played for the Ignite team.
So I definitely think that the JBA laid
groundwork.
the groundwork for.
Oh my bad. They're not gonna give him credit, but JBA had a top 2 pick in the draft.
Oh, facts.
They're not
facts.
gonna give him credit, but they.
Oh, because he didn't come from there.
He came from the JBA.
Technically, he did. I was gonna say.
I mean, technically, yes. But he didn't get drafted from.
Not straight from there, but hey.
But no, I mean, but no, for real. I think the JBA League. I think they definitely need more credit than what they are given.
Yeah.
Especially because, like you said, literally LaMelo got picked second overall. Yeah, he did not go straight from there, but that was it was one of his journeys on
Very
the way.
important stepping stone.
Isn't that crazy that they don't even mention that when they talk about LaMelo?
They don't, man.
That's crazy.
Because they don't really talk about it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
crazy. It's like it never existed. Like he never played there or it never existed.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's important for people like Brandon who worked there and got to experience that. And he, writing this book, I think that's awesome that he did that. He's trying to get the word out. He's on these podcasts. He's, he used to be on Twitter lighting it up. So, no, shouts to him for sure. Give that league, the props because now you are seeing these players. They're getting paid, and they're also developing. If they don't want to go to school, there are these different ways to get you there to your end goal, which is the NBA.
Hey, and they did it first, man.
They did it first, man. But, hey, guys, we appreciate you rocking with us as always. We will be back next week with our regular episode. We will have a lot to talk about, of course.
For sure.
I also did want to end this, too. Shout out the Texas Rangers for winning the World Series.
Go Rangers!
It is a good time to be from Dallas right now. So shout out goes to them. They balled out, to get there. They're in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure.
11-0 on the road is crazy. I just want to say that. It's crazy.
Wow, man.
That's crazy.
So shout out to them, man. And but yeah, we'll be back next week. We appreciate y'all rocking with us. Of course, as always, subscribe and like the video below. Go ahead and also comment and let us know what you thought about Brandon Williams, what you thought about the episode. Give us your feedback. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you like, what you don't like, any ideas. Who should we get next? If y'all have any ideas of who y'all would like to see us get on the show, we would definitely be down to do that. But yeah, as always, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Right On Target Pod. X is _ Right On Target Pod, or just Right On Target.
Right on target. Not enough characters.
I always forget.
It's not enough characters.
I always forget, man. But yeah, so just follow us on our socials, man. But until then, we out.
Peace.
Peace.